We saw how Herodotus made a careful study of different peoples, the Persians, the Lydians, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and so forth. He observed how all of these peoples have radically different customs. As we noted, this was a part of a larger ongoing discussion about cultural relativism that can be found among the ancient Greeks, which includes the pre-Socratic thinkers and the sophists, and plays an important role in Plato's dialogues. Sophocles' Oedipus the King can be seen as contributing in a critical way to this debate. Herodotus observes that each culture believes that their own customs are the best ones. This relativity of value then leads to the problem of whether or not one can really speak of truth at all, that it's not somehow just a prejudiced reflection of one's own culture. The view of the relativist is that there are no universals and everything is simply a human convention determined by history, culture, religion, etc. Sophocles presents his audience with a story that offers a bold refutation of this view. He argues that in fact there are universals that are absolute and that transcend all human cultures. These are not made by human beings, but are, as it were, determined by nature. This is often referred to as the theory of natural law, and it has a long tradition in the field of jurisprudence. According to this notion, things are right and wrong in themselves, and not just because a given culture or people happens to say so. The idea is that the fundamental laws of ethics are absolutes that are non-negotiable. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, this can be conceived in terms of God's commandments. His laws are absolute because He's God and He says so. It would be absurd for individual human beings to rebel against these laws, since humans are finite and fallible. They have no authority that can match that of God in such matters. But Sophocles is, of course, neither a Jew nor a Christian, and so what are these universals that he's proposing? For him, the prohibitions against patricide and incest are absolutes. These are taboo, not just among the Athenians or among the Greeks, but among all peoples. These are universal natural laws. They're created by the gods as fixed elements of the universe. According to the Greek way of thinking, the human world and the natural world were intimately connected. The natural world dictates the terms of human existence. At the beginning of the work, the immediate problem that sets the action into motion is that Thebes has been struck by a plague. The priest whom Oedipus talks to describes the terrible results. Quote, "A blight is on the fruitful plants of the earth. A blight is on the cattle in the field. A blight is on our women, that no children are born to them." End quote. What does this signify? Through his patricide and incest, Oedipus has violated the laws of nature. He has disrupted the harmony that should exist in the universe according to these laws as set down by the gods. As a result, nature itself reacts. It's unnatural for crops not to grow, for cattle not to reproduce, and for young and healthy people to die suddenly, but this is what happens. Even though the human sphere is still unaware of the crimes committed by Oedipus, nature knows. Nature thus punishes the crime of its own accord, entirely independent of human action. Here it's clear that the natural laws are conceived to be like physical laws of nature for the Greeks. Governed by cause and effect, they're the basic facts of the universe, and if they're violated, then the universe itself must restore the rightful order of things. The Greeks were constantly attentive to the messages of nature. The plague is nature's way of telling people that something is wrong. This prompts them to send to the oracle in order to identify the problem, but initially, the plague itself is a form of communication between nature and human beings. It's nature's way of speaking. In ancient times, plagues were not uncommon, and many ancient texts refer to them. As we will see, the Greek historian Thucydides describes a famous plague that took place in Athens starting in 429 BC during the Peloponnesian War, that is, presumably shortly before the production of Oedipus the King. The doctor Hippocrates dedicates medical works to the plague, which include medical journals. In cases such as these, the question was inevitably asked about why the plague was happening and what nature's message was. As was the case with the Hebrews when they suffered misfortune, so also with the Greeks, the interpretation was always that someone had done something wrong, and this was a reaction by the gods via nature. At the beginning of the Iliad, the Greek camp is suffering from a terrible plague. The priest Calchas explains that this is Apollo's punishment for the fact that the Greeks had not returned Chrysis, the captured daughter of his priest, when the Trojans had offered a ransom for her.